Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.
Are you ready for the word?
Yes.
Turn to Genesis 6, verse 1. And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. We know that Hebrew word there is tob, means they were an excellent creation. And they took them wives of all which they chose. And Yahweh said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. The word translated as giants there is the word Nephilim. It is only used 3 times in the scripture, once here and twice over in Numbers 13. If you want to turn there, we'll read that as well. This is where the 12 spies go in to search out the land of promise, and they came back with a report of what they had seen. And here is part of that report found in Numbers 13 in verse 33. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So both times here where you see the word giant or giants, it is the word Nephil, from which we get the word Nephilim. But we also need to note that you will see 3 references. You'll see in the scriptures, you'll see references to the Nephilim. You'll see references to Anak, and you see that there in verse 33, the sons of Anak, or Anaki, or sometimes a reference to Anakim. All the same thing, Anak, Anaki, or Anakim. And then there are 25 references in the scripture to beings called Raphaim, or Raphaim. Nephilim, Anakim, and Raphaim. All 3 of these words refer to beings who all have the same 3 characteristics. Number 1, they're the offspring of the sons of God who married daughters of men, angels and women. Number 2, they are all of great stature. Now, the great stature before the flood and the great stature after the flood are vastly different, but they all were of great stature. The third characteristics they all 3 share is they all had great strength and were of a fierce countenance. Genesis 6:4 tells us that there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, it is referring to beings that are hybrids. They are part human, part angelic. It is referring to beings that were of great stature, and it is referring to beings who possess great might. Genesis 6 says they were in the earth. Mark that. They were in the earth. When were they in the earth? Before the flood? And after the flood. Okay? In those days and after. Their existence is not a fable. Where they came from is not a fable. How they came to be is not a fable. Their great height and strength is not a fable. The supernatural aspects of their being are not fables. These things were real. They were real before the flood, and they are real after the flood. That's what our Bible says. You know, we love to shout about our love and devotion to Torah.
Yes.
We like to pledge our devotion to Torah. Well, here it is. We barely got started in our study of Torah, and here it is in Genesis 3. It talks to us about the seed of the serpent, and then in Genesis 6, it starts talking about the seed of the serpent coming to manifestation. Genesis 3 warned us that there would be the seed of the serpent that would war with the seed of man. And in Genesis 6, Torah is telling us about the seed of the serpent coming into being as a result of the sons of God who rebelled against God, taking the daughters of men and having offspring with them. This is Torah that's telling us this. It's not some other book. It's not the Apocrypha. It is not some fairy tale. This is Torah telling us this. So my question is, what parts of Torah are we going to embrace? Some say none. Some say, no, that was for the Jews, it's not for us, we don't need it anymore, right? Do you agree with that? No? Well, what about us? Do we only want Leviticus 11 and the dietary instruction? Do we only want Leviticus 23 and the moedim instruction? Or do we really cherish all of Torah?
Amen.
Torah is the instruction of Yahweh, right?
Right.
And if Yahweh's taken the time to instruct us about Nephilim, Anakim and Raphaim, it's because we need that instruction.
Yes, sir.
Having said that, let me say this. Studying about the giants in the Bible is not for everyone. And I can explain that statement if we'll take the time to look at 7 parables told in Matthew 13. I'm going to read the first one beginning in verse 1. The same day went Yeshua out of the house and sat by the seaside. Great multitudes were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them up. Some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But some fell into good ground and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. And the disciples came and said unto him, Why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered and said unto them, Listen to him. Because it's given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever has not, from him shall be taken away even that he has. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they, seeing, see not, and hearing, they hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which says, By hearing you shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing you shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes they've closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say to you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which you see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which you hear, and they have not heard them. Messiah said, It is given for you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. In Matthew 13, the Messiah spoke 7 parables. All 7 of these parables are meant to do 2 things. They're meant to conceal the mysteries of the kingdom and to reveal the mysteries of the kingdom. Right. They're meant to do both. That's what he said. Right. They said, Why do you speak in parables? He said, Well, because it's given to you to know, but it's not given to them to know, because they have eyes and cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. Right. So I speak in a parable, it conceals the truth from them, but it reveals the truth to you. So we need to look at these parables and understand that when we read them, some will read them and the mysteries will be concealed from them. But some will read them and the mysteries are revealed to them. I want to give you this morning 2 keys to understanding the 7 parables listed here. The first key is you have to have a love for truth. If you don't have a love for truth, you'll miss what he's trying to communicate to you in Matthew 13. In the first parable of the sower, the message is that those who reap the fruit of the seed sown are those who prepare their hearts to receive it, who make sure they get the stones, the rocks out of their heart, who pull up the weeds and tear down the briars, who do not let the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke it out. Those people reap the fruit, because why? They love the seed that gets sown into their heart. They love truth. They love revelation knowledge. You have to love truth and you have to pursue it. Truth and revelation are never given to a casual reader of Scripture. Never. Number two, you have to read these parables and focus on what Messiah is telling you to focus on. Let me give you some examples here. In the parable of the mustard seed, the casual reader will focus on the seed becoming a tree. They focus on those objects. And that is not what the Messiah told you to focus on. If you focus on the seed and it becoming a tree and you focus on those objects, then you're going to pull out of it, well, it must mean that His kingdom's going to grow rapidly and it's going to be awesome. The parable of the great pearl. Casual readers focus on the pearl of great price. And they say, well, the Messiah is the pearl of great price, and so He is of more value than anything else. The parable of the hidden treasure, if you focus on the treasure, you're going to come to the same conclusion. He must be telling me that He is that hidden treasure and that we need to make sure we find Him, sell everything we have, and be ready to dedicate ourselves to Him. But if you'll read the parables carefully, you'll find that He was directing you where to put your focus. And it was never on the objects that He was talking about. Every time He told these parables, He was directing your attention to focus on a process. He wanted you to pay attention to the process. The objects are the tree, the pearl, the treasure, the 3 measures of wheat, the wheat field, the net. Do not focus on those objects because you will draw conclusions. You'll draw conclusions that are false. Let me say it that way. What Messiah said do is focus on the process. And when you focus on the process, the mysteries of the kingdom are revealed. Well, I'm going to have to do this quickly. But I want us to look at these last 6 parables and pay attention to the process. The last time we did this was in 2010. And it took 10 weeks to do it. I've got about 25 minutes to do it. So hang on. Parable number 1 is the sower. We're going to be looking at the 6 parables that He told after He talked about the sower. Parable number 2, called the parable of the tares, found in verse 24 through 30 in Matthew 13. And there was a process that took place. Focus on the process. The disciples were confused by this parable and they asked Him to explain it, and He did. So what I want to do, though we're pushed for time, I want to take the time to read His explanation, because if we read His explanation, we'll see the emphasis that He is putting upon the process. Look in verse 36. He told 7 parables. One of them, they asked Him, why do you speak in parables? Then He told this parable about the tares, and when they got alone, they didn't ask Him about the rest of them, but they asked Him, what did you mean by that one? We didn't understand that one. And so He explains it to them. Listen to Him in verse 36. Then Yeshua sent the multitude away and went into the house, and His disciples came unto Him, saying, declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, he that sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom. But the tares are who? Who are the tares?
Sons of the wicked ones.
Children of the wicked one. Genesis 3. Genesis 3:15 says, I'm going to put enmity between your seed and her seed. We have failed to realize that the enemy has seed in the earth. The tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world. The reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth His angels. They shall gather out of His kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. So He's explaining a process, and in that process, we see that the tares might be among the wheat and even look like wheat, but they are not wheat. The church, we said it this way back in 2010, the church is not near as big as it looks like.
Right.
When you see all those tares out there in that field, they look like wheat. They resemble wheat. They're in the midst of wheat. It looks like there's more wheat there than there really is. Church is not near as big as it looks. But here's another hidden mystery in this parable. The seed of the serpent's mentioned. The devil, Yeshua said the devil is sowing his children into the world. He's sowing his seed into the world. We missed that the first time. Having eyes to see, we didn't see it. We didn't have ears to hear it the first time. The devil sows his children into the world. Some of the tares are his seed. Some of the tares are people who were deceived by these children of the wicked one. Some of them are his offspring. Some of them are just deceived human beings. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Some of them are hybrids.
Right.
Some of them are deceived human beings. All right. Keep that in mind. Go to parable number 3. It's found in verse 31 and 32, the parable of the mustard seed. We must focus on the process to understand the parable. Don't focus on the mustard seed, focus on the process. A man sowed a mustard seed in his field. This parable has a but in it, not an and. It doesn't say that he sowed his mustard seed in the field and when it was grown. It says he sowed it in his field, but when it was grown. When it was grown, it should have been an herb. That's what a mustard seed produces, is an herb. It produces a plant. But instead, it grew into a tree. The tree had branches, and the birds of the air came and lodged there. We don't have time right now to break this thing down, but we will. And at another time, we'll go back and we'll re-examine all of this. But if you go and search the scriptures, what you will see is that these birds represent demon spirits.
Right.
The seed became something it was never meant to be. And it gave lodging to birds. Birds represent evil spirits. And so the Messiah is warning us about a process where Yahweh is trying to do something in the earth and it gets altered, infiltrated, attacked, and perverted by Satan.
Right.
It happened in the first one, the tares. Now it's happening again. Everybody thinks it's just great. Look at this big, beautiful tree. Look what we've produced. Look at all the people we have. Look at all the outreach we have. And the Messiah is wanting you to focus on the process that brought evil spirits in there, bringing their demonic doctrines in there. It became something it was never meant to be. He that has ears to hear, let him hear. We're going to move on to parable number 4. The 3 measures of wheat. That parable is found in verse 33. Here's the process. A woman hid. She didn't put it in there. She hid in there. She hid leaven in 3 measures of wheat until the whole was leavened. 3 measures of wheat. If you go back and study Torah, go back and look in Leviticus, you'll find out that this is the measurement used for a holy meal offering that was to be brought forth to Yahweh, and it specified that this holy meal offering of 3 measures of wheat is to be unleavened bread. This woman took that 3 measures of wheat and she hid leaven in it until the whole was leavened. What does leaven do? I'm not asking you what it is. What does leaven do? Do what now?
Puffs it up.
Puffs it up.
Spread right.
Makes it rise. Let me tell you what leaven does to dough. It makes it get bigger. It's so fluffy. And it makes it taste better.
Yeah.
Leavened bread tastes better than unleavened bread.
That's true.
And it looks better than unleavened bread. Right?
Right.
So see the image that Messiah is talking about. He and his Father are doing a work in the earth. But it keeps getting infiltrated and altered and turned into something it was never meant to be. But it's more appealing to the masses.
Right.
It looks better, it tastes better, it feels better. But it's become something that it was never meant to be. Now, what does leaven represent?
Sin.
It represents sin, but it represents something else.
False doctrine.
The doctrine of demons. False doctrine. False doctrine kept being put in it until it became something the masses said, yeah, I can hook up with that. The doctrine of demons are being taught, and people love it, and they flock to it. And it has swelled. The church is not near as big as it looks. The true assembly of Yahweh is not near as big as it looks. Because it's been puffed up, made appealing to the masses with the doctrines of demons.
Amen.
Are you with me? The holiness and sacredness of truth is lost as the doctrines of Satan are embraced. Parable number 5. The parable of the hidden treasure. A man went into a field that he did not own. That's in verse 44. He was a trespasser. If you go in a field you do not own, you're trespassing.
Right.
He found a treasure. If he's trespassing, the treasure is not his. He dug it up and he hid it somewhere else. And then he sold all that he had and he bought the field. Nothing he did made him the rightful owner of that treasure. He was slick, but nothing he did. Pay attention to the process, not the object. Nothing he did made him the rightful owner of that treasure. He was a trespasser stealing something that didn't belong to him, conning his way into the possession of it. Again, this parable is simply telling us about how Satan has devoted everything he is and everything he is trying to do to take what doesn't belong to him. The creation belongs to Yahweh. Yahweh made it. It doesn't belong to Satan. But he's working overtime in the earth with his seed to take possession of something that's not his. And he's devoted everything he is to taking it. Right. And he's using every deceptive means he can to take possession of it.
Right.
And he knows that if he fails, he's annihilated.
Right.
He's committed to the task.
Yes, he is.
Parable number 6. The parable of the pearl of great price is found in verse 45 and 46. I'm going to come back to that one. Parable number 7 is the parable of the net. If you look at the process, the net's cast into the sea and it brings up fish of all kind. So here is the process. Here's what we need to know once we read that parable. There's no such thing as a net that catches only good fish.
Right.
The net in the parable was cast into the sea, and it said that it gathered of every kind. The point being that in the earth there are more than one kind. There's a seed of the woman, and there's a seed of the serpent. There's coming a day when the net will be pulled in and the two will be separated. It's a warning of a judgment coming. Now back to parable number 6. The parable of the pearl of great price. Verse 45 and verse 46. Notice that when the Messiah told this parable, he didn't just say a man. Some of the other ones he said a man sowed seed or a man did this. But here he adds an adjective to the man. What kind of man is it that he's talking about in verse 45? A merchant man. A specific kind of man. This man, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a merchant man who seeks goodly pearls. Do you know what a merchant man is? Goodly pearls are his business. Goodly pearls are his passion. That's who he is. That's what he does. He goes all over the earth in search of goodly pearls. He purchases them wholesale. He carries them back and distributes them to others. That's his business. That's what he wakes up and does every day of his life. He goes in search of goodly pearls, purchases them, wow, what a word, buys them wholesale, brings them back, and redistributes them. They benefit him. That's how he and his family benefit, is from his ability to find and bring into his possession good pearls. Yeah. Understand? Until one day, we're told, he found a pearl of great price. We're not told that he got a good deal on it. We're just told it was a pearl of great price. So what he does is he forgets about who he is, and he forgets about what he does. He forgets about all the benefit that comes from finding all of these goodly pearls. He leaves all of that behind. He goes home. He sells everything that he has, and he goes back and purchases that one pearl. He is no longer a merchant man. He can't function as a merchant man anymore. He doesn't have the resources to function as a merchant man anymore. He's no longer a merchant man. He is a possessor. He's a collector. He's got one pearl that he polishes and shines and admires and looks at and shows to other people. That's who he's become, the collector. His seeking days are over. He quit seeking. He's a polisher. He's an admirer. To understand how wrong that was, we have to know what Messiah meant when he used the analogy of pearls. Go back to Matthew 7. What's taking place in Matthew 5, 6, and 7?
Sermon.
It's called the Sermon on the Mount, but what did we discover when we went through it?
He's training his disciples.
It's a ministerial training program. He's not teaching the multitudes. He brought his 12 disciples up on the mountain. He sat them down, and he sat down, and he taught them. This wasn't a message to the masses. This was a ministerial training in which he was giving insight and truth and revelation knowledge to his disciples so that they could operate in the kingdom of heaven the same way he did. Go back and look at it. That's what he's doing. Matthew 5, 6, and 7 is him imparting revelation knowledge, revelation truth to his disciples. In Matthew 7, verse 6, he said this to them. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine. And then he tells them why. Lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you. So what are the pearls he's referring to? When he says to the disciples, don't cast your pearls before swine, is he talking about literal pearls?
He's talking about the truths they're learning.
The revelation knowledge, the revelation truth that he's sharing with them. He has spent time on that mountain, Matthew 5, Matthew 6, some powerful, powerful revelation knowledge. He is now saying to them, don't go cast this before swine. So the pearls is a reference to revelation knowledge or truth that he has taught them. He said, don't cast them before swine. Why does he not want them to cast them before swine?
Be trampled and...
Okay. The pearls have no value to swine.
Yeah.
You could throw a $2 million pearl out there in front of a swine. He don't care. He'll just walk right over top of it.
Yeah.
But then because it wasn't something he wanted to eat, Messiah said, he'll turn and rend you.
Right.
You cast something out here he can't eat, he don't want. You're of no value to him either.
Right.
When truth is revealed to you, you learn real fast that not everybody's open to hearing it.
Right.
To some people, the truth that you value highly, to some people it has no value at all. And if you're not talking about what they're hearing every time they go to their place to worship, they figure you're nutso anyway.
Right.
To others, it makes them angry and they'll rip you to shreds. You dare challenge their doctrine with something you've seen in the Bible,
Yeah.
they'll rend you.
Yeah.
Messiah understood that this would happen and he warned us about it. We shouldn't be shocked by it. I mean, in chapter 5, he said, when you're persecuted, rejoice. It's going to happen. What I'm about to share with you is revelation, knowledge, and truth. And it's going to bring persecution into your life. Men are going to hate you and despise you. So he warned us about it. Now go back to Matthew 13. Understand that in Matthew 13, he has not changed the pearl to make it represent something else. It still represents truth. It still represents revelation knowledge. We're to be like merchant men who are always on a quest for more pearls.
Yeah.
For more understanding of truth, for more revelation knowledge. The minute we stop looking and value a truth, we found, the minute we stop searching, because we found a truth that we value too highly to go in search of other truth,
Yeah.
we make a big mistake. Did y'all understand that?
Say it again.
Say it again. The minute that we find a truth and we begin to value that truth so highly that we camp out there
Yeah.
and we don't go in search of other truth, we're making a mistake.
Right.
Every stagnant denomination
Sorry.
made that mistake.
Right.
Salvation by grace through faith is a pearl of great price.
Right.
It's, how do you put a value on that?
Yeah.
There is no other way. Messiah is the way, the truth, and the life. There's no other way to Yahweh except through Him. And we are saved by grace through faith, not of works, lest any man should boast. That is a pearl of great price. But it's not the only pearl in the Scriptures.
Right.
But that's where some have stopped. They'll not seek other pearls. That's all they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about anything else you find in the Bible. All they want to talk about is salvation by grace through faith. Healing and health are pearls of great price.
Right.
But it's not the only pearl. Faith is a pearl of great price.
Right.
It's a gateway to salvation. It's a gateway to healing. It's a gateway to receiving from the hand of Yahweh. It's a pearl of great price to see and understand that faith has 4 basic components. It is a pearl of great price to see that wherever there is a need for Yahweh, there is need of a man.
Right.
But those are not the only pearls.
Right.
Some have stopped there. They do not seek further. Faith is all they talk about.
Right.
Got to have faith. You got to have more faith. Got to have the faith is at least as big as a mustard seed. That's all they talk about. Some, all they'll talk about is healing. They don't want to talk about anything else. That's where they focus, is healing. And that's a pearl of great price. But there are other pearls, but that's where they have camped out. Some have found a pearl that deals with how Yahweh wants to bless us. And prosperity is where they've stopped, and that's all they want to talk about. We know that you can't get one pearl and stop. So let us not make the mistake of becoming a people who the only truth, the only pearl that we want to talk about is the pearl of truth that knows and understands that the law is not passed away. No, it hadn't passed away. It's written in our hearts and it's put in our minds. That's a pearl of great price. That's revelation knowledge. That's truth. But is that all we're ever going to talk about? Is the only pearl we're going to talk about is the pearl of truth that knows and understands that there are animals that are meant to be food and that there are animals that are meant to be septic tanks? And Torah says, eat those meant to be food, don't eat out of the septic tank.
Right.
That's a pearl of great price.
Right. Yeah.
You can't be healthy and eat out of the septic tank.
Right.
Right? To understand the deep significance of Yahweh's moedim, to understand the deep significance and importance of His moedim, and to understand the danger and the ugliness of fake, made-up holidays that were sown into the church by the enemy. Right. To understand that is a pearl of great price. But is that the only pearl we're going to talk about? Are we going to get up Sabbath after Sabbath after Sabbath and talk about all those people who celebrate those old ugly holidays, but we celebrate the moedim of Yahweh? Is that all we're going to hammer on?
Yes, sir.
The pearl of truth that knows and understands the deep significance of the Sabbath? That's a pearl that how are you going to put value on that? It is beyond value. Are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Have we reached a place that when we assemble together, all we're allowed to talk about is the law didn't pass away, we keep the Sabbath, we obey the dietary laws, and we keep the feast? It's easy to fall into that rut.
Yes, sir.
Or trap, or whatever you want to call it. The moment we say, I come here to hear messages about how we're to keep the feast and how wrong others are to celebrate that other stuff, and that is as far as we're willing to go, we make a huge mistake.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
The moment we say, I come here to hear messages about how important it is to eat according to Yahweh's instruction and how wrong it is for all them other people to eat shrimp, and that's as far as we're willing to go, we make a huge mistake.
Yes, sir.
The moment that all we want to hear about is a message that has something to do with the feast, a message that has some explanation in it about how people twist Paul's writings, or we want to hear a message about the proper name of our Creator, and there's another pearl of great price.
Yeah.
But the moment we assemble and that's all we want to hear about, we're making a huge mistake.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
I've been at this long enough to know when the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, is leading me to search out something in Scripture. And I know that He has led me to Genesis 3 and Genesis 6 and to the treasure of truth that is written there.
Amen.
When He prompted me to go, I thought I was going for a different reason. But as soon as I arrived where I knew He was leading, I knew there were things He wanted to show me. I've been at this long enough to know when He's doing that.
Amen.
I've also been at this long enough to know when my flesh wants to pull back. When He started leading me into wanting to show me about how dark the holidays were that were embraced by me and my family and churches all over the world, my flesh wanted to pull back because I understood that as He began to show me these things, I was going to make a lot of people mad. So my flesh said, no, you better leave that alone.
Yeah.
I understood. I remember how my flesh wanted to pull back from a study of the moedim. How my flesh kept saying, no, that's not important. you're just getting into a whole lot of ritual that's just going to bog you down. I had to deal with it. Same thing about the name. When you start studying the name, the swine trample it underfoot and they'll turn and rend you.
Yeah.
And my flesh said, pull back from that just a little bit. Understand? It did not want me to search out the truth about the Sabbath, about the name, about the demonic celebrations, the necessity of faith in order to be able to cooperate with Yahweh. It did not want me to study about the feast or dietary laws. My flesh rose up and told me to leave those things alone, or else I'd lose friends, I'd lose family, and I'd lose members of a congregation. I've been at this long enough to know the difference between the prompting of the Ruach HaKodesh and the pressure of my own flesh. They've both been at work the past few weeks. The Ruach HaKodesh beckoning me to dig in, to search it out, to come and see. The Ruach HaKodesh saying to me, having eyes to see, come see. Having ears to hear, come hear. And the flesh has been working overtime, warning me to leave it alone. And so I've had a little bit of timidity as I've waded into this subject. Because you know why there's timidity too? It's because I don't know where it's going to take us.
Right.
And I didn't want to start studying the moedim, and I didn't want to start studying the Sabbath, and I didn't want to start studying the name. Didn't know where it was going to go. I just kept taking a step toward Yahweh.
Right.
The flesh has been working overtime, warning me to just leave this subject alone. Learning about giants in the Bible is not for everyone. It's not. But neither is learning about the Sabbath.
Right.
Neither is learning about the name.
Right.
Neither is learning about the moedim. Neither is learning about the dietary laws. So I stand here today just simply to make known to you and to myself that learning about the giants in the Bible may not be for everyone, but it's for me.
Amen.
It's written in Torah. And if Yahweh wants me to know about it, then there are two things that are certain. I need to know about it. And number two, I'm going to do everything within my power to know about it. I don't care who it upsets.
Amen.
I'm not going to back down from this study because it makes my flesh uncomfortable. I'm not going to back down from this study just because I'm not sure whether you want to hear it or not.
Amen.
If I use that as a measuring tool, then I'd be no different than the propagators of lies out there who only tell their people what they want to hear.
Right.
I would not have arrived where I'm at if I was governed by the concern with whether you wanted to hear it or not.
Amen.
You've been here long enough to know, most of you, that for 16 years I've begun every message I have ever taught the exact same way. And how is that? Are you ready for the Word? Wherever this study takes us, you can be assured of two things. Number one, it's going to be the Word. And number two, you're going to have to be ready.
That's right.
Amen.
Amen. Everywhere I read now that we've begun, began to see what was in Genesis 3, began to see what was in Genesis 6, and now when I start reading other places in the Bible, I'm thinking, how did I not see this? It's everywhere. Genesis 3, the theme set down in Genesis 3, you can draw a straight line all the way through the Bible. Every page of it has to do with this war that's taking place between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman. It's everywhere we look. I see that perhaps there is much we haven't yet seen.
Amen.
I see that Messiah wasn't just name calling. When he would say to somebody, "You're acting just like your father."
Yeah.
He wasn't just name calling. He was identifying.
Yeah.
"You're the seed of the serpent. I know who you are. I know what you're doing." He knew who his father was.
Right.
I see that we failed to understand who and what the demons were that he confronted continuously in his ministry. If you do not understand Genesis 6, you do not understand who a demon is and what it's doing. But if you understand Genesis 6, the demons get identified and you understand why he had to deal with them continuously in his ministry. I see that we have read and reread verses, and what they were trying to tell us, we failed to grasp. You go look in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, and there you'll see the Apostle Paul warning that Satan has ministers. These aren't just people he influences, some of them are. But he has his ministers who he can transform. 2 Corinthians 11 says, they transform themselves into the apostles of the Messiah. You look at them, you would think that's one of Messiah's apostles. Paul said, make no mistake about it. They're the ministers of Satan. There's that seed war taking place. I think that we failed to see the significance of these words found in Ephesians 6. Finally, my brethren, be strong in Yahweh and in the power of His might. Put on the whole armor of Yahweh, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Do a word study on the word wiles. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I think we have read that in the past and thought, well, there are principalities and powers, there's rulers of the darkness, there's spiritual wickedness in high places that are influencing people. Yeah. And that to reach them, we're going to have to do this spiritual warfare. Yeah. But I think we have underestimated what he's trying to communicate to us. Though that may be one aspect of it, it's also very possible and probable that he was saying to us, not everybody you encounter is flesh. Some of them are the seed of that serpent. Some of them are the tares that are being sown into the earth. They've got a completely different makeup. They may look like wheat, and they in all appearances, you would think it's wheat until you get real close and examine it, and you say, nope, that's not wheat, that's tare. It's the same with people. There are people being sown in the earth that you think, well, it looks like a normal person. But the serpent is sowing his seed for that final battle. I think our journey kind of can be paralleled with the journey of those who came out of Egypt and going toward the land of promise. They came out of Egypt and it was good to be out from under that bondage. Right? And they experienced miracles and deliverances. They were blessed. They got manna out of heaven. They got water out of a rock. They saw miracles take place. They encountered the very presence of Yahweh. They began to build a bond and a relationship with Yahweh that they found to be just amazing. They heard Torah. It was given to them. They found out they could enter into a covenant with Him. And when they heard the terms of the covenant, they said, yes, we can do that. Be in covenant with Yahweh. Yes, we will do that. And then they come on and they get up to the border. And Yahweh says, we are in a relationship. And I got great things in store for you. But the enemy is taking possession of something that I gave to you. And now I need you, we're in covenant, I need you to go kick them out of there. Because that doesn't belong to them, that belongs to you. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. We want to sit here on this side and have Moses tell us more about Torah.
Wow.
Let Moses teach us every Sabbath about the Sabbath. Let Moses teach us about the dietary laws. Let Moses teach us about this and about that. We're not going over there to do battle. And in my being, that's where I sense that we are as an assembly, is that we've got to decide that Yahweh has taught us about relationship and about the terms of the covenant. He's taught us how to draw near to Him. But now He's saying, there's a battle coming, and if you don't let me prepare you for it, you're not going to be able to take back what belongs to you.
That's good.
This study in Genesis 6 is about more than people that were tall. It's about the enemy trying to alter and infiltrate and destroy what Yahweh's doing in the earth. And Yahweh is going to raise up an army to stop him. Learning about giants is not for everyone. You'll have to decide for yourself whether it's for you or not. Stand up. We are going to be studying what's in Torah.
Right.
People have to decide for themselves whether they want to hear it or not.
Amen.
Yahweh bless you and keep you. I love you. Yahweh make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. As His name is put upon you, so shall He bless you.